Right on, guys. Cooter here, coming back to you. It's Monday morning, back on the JK project. And I'm by myself today, so I'm not going to be filming nearly as much as we did the other day on the rear end. But what I can show you is the rear is all buttoned up. Tires are back on. Actually, I took advantage of the time to rotate the tires. So the fronts, when I took those off, went straight to the back. Rear's all buttoned up. The locker plug is right here. Focus. I'm going to tape and seal this up for now. I don't know when I'll get the chance to run the electrical wiring and power it up, but I did test it with a power probe. Put power and ground to it. Turned it. It does lock. It locks beautifully. And it does unlock. Everything works perfect. So, without boring you with the details, but what do you think, guys? Let me know on the paint color test here. We're experimenting with some colors on the growler. Leave a comment down below if you want. These two are out. These are actually very similar to the same. One's a Rust-Oleum, one's an Ace Hardware. This is a duplicate color, dark emerald green. It's a 2011 and older Chrysler color. This is very close to, I think, what the Jeep was originally painted when I had it done 4 or 5 years ago. We did all the body work on it and did it with bed liner, and the color match, I wanted the original color, which is, I know you can't tell in the video, but that's the grill. The grill was originally painted, the color that and I wanted to keep it that color. When we did the bed liner material on the outside, the color didn't match quite right. So I'm going to redo it this winter, and I'm trying to find just a can of, rattle can paint to make touch-up easier. I got a couple buddies who have done the same thing. Can't afford to take this thing to a body shop every time we go on a run and scratch it up. So I'm hoping that, and we get it out in the sun tomorrow, that this might be the color, and it's easy to get. But anyway, let me know what you think about that dark green. This color here really is the one that hopefully we're going to go with. All right. But anyway, back to the JK. I won't bore you with all the details. High pinion Dana 30, factory 2015 axle. This will probably be replaced ultimately with a Rubicon 44 housing, an axle this winter, or maybe in the spring. I've got a line on a good used one that'll just need to be regeared to 456. So anyway, everything's already off of it. It's all standard stuff. This one had a big brake kit already that I put on here last year. So everything's just going to get cleaned up eventually and put back in. The ball joints are fine. The only thing I really had to take off that was in the way on this one, because it was factory, was the tie rod. It gives you plenty of room to work on the differential. Let me show you what came in the kit. Here is the Yukon install kit. Just says D30 and a JK, and this is everything that came with it. Thanks Yukon again for giving me 2 crush sleeves. I tend to get it screwed up on the first time. Axle tube seals. For those that aren't familiar, this is what seals your gear oil in the end of the tube. So if you have a Jeep where you've got a stream of ooey gooey black gear oil running out of here, that's this seal right here. And I don't know if I can show you in there. The light's kind of dying. I'm going to charge it up here. These are factory seals, but those are them right there. Back up here a little bit and let you focus in. It's a little tough to see, but let me tell you, rest assured, they are in the tubes. They're in here, and they go in from the inside. So this would be the replacement. They go in this way, and then they get pressed in with a special press. I can show you that tool too. They do not go in from the outside. You would actually put a driver in here on the outside and to get them out and drive them into the middle of the housing. And then the reverse would be true for the new ones. They would go in and press outward. And that's what seals the gear oil inside the diff. But these will just go in the box. Like I said, if I end up replacing this in the spring with a new axle housing, these are fine. So carrier bearings, pinion seal, whole bunch of shims. One thing I'd like to point out on these shims, I don't know if you could see it in the video. Let me focus here. There's a little step in this master shim. So if I end up using these, the nice part will be that instead of trying to jam a whole pack of shims in like this that are all kind of loosey-goosey, these have a step on them. Some of them have a taller step than others, and they actually have an outer shim that interlocks. I don't think I'm gonna need that many shims on these, but that inner lip will kind of keep this whole shim pack together and go in more or less as one thick shim. I didn't measure that step in there, but I would guess if I had to use my fingernail guesstimator gauge, it's probably 60 thousandths thick. And that'll be nice. That'll help to hold all the shims together in one pack. All right, so again, that's just the bearing. Oh, one other thing that they do include, because this is a generic Dana 30 kit, depending on what your ring gear bolt thread is, they actually give you 2 sets of new bolts. They also give you these little spacers, which will fit over the little bolts and adapt it if you happen to be putting this onto maybe an aftermarket differential carrier that requires these larger, I don't know what these are, 7/16 bolts. This little spacer needs to go on here first, and that will make the hole the correct size for these little 3/8 bolts. So a lot of guys break the ring gear bolts on a JK, on a Dana 30. That's why. There's 10 of them, but they're kind of, I think there's 10 of them. I don't know. There's one more there on the floor. You all can count those. I'm not counting them. Here is here's the new ring gear. Definitely going to use the smaller bolts. Because this is a 456 ratio going from a 321 to 456, I actually had to buy a new carrier. And the reason being, they don't make a 456 thick ring gear. So notice the size difference of the pinion heads. 321 has, I don't know how many teeth on it, but this one has 9. So being that the head is smaller, naturally the ring gear has to move closer to the head to engage the teeth. If I just took that out, put this in without moving the ring gear, or put it on the original carrier, I would never be able to shim it. I would have so much backlash. So the new carrier actually moves it over, and I'll show you that right now. I think I can give you a good enough visual that you won't. All right, we're gonna lay this phone down here. And if you line these two up, it's not much, but the mating flange on this ring gear is taller. It's closer to the center than the one that came off. You can see I can't even slide this over it. So it does move it up. It's only 1/8 of an inch, maybe. I'd have to measure it with a micrometer. I'm not gonna do that, doesn't matter. What I do need to do is strip this ring gear off of here, move the cross pin, the spider gears and everything from this diff to this diff. No big deal there. There's one roll pin that has to be driven out right here. You can see it right there. Once you take the ring gear off, I think I have to take the ring gear off. Yeah, I do, because you can see how the cross shaft won't come out past the teeth on the ring gear. So I'm gonna take this ring gear off. It's only a bunch of bolts. Knock that off. Knock out the roll pin, pull out the cross shaft, take out all the gears. I'll oil them up, I'll clean them all up. They'll all go back in here. This carrier is a Spicer. I guess it's not a Spicer. It's a Yukon carrier. It was around 50 bucks, 60 bucks. That's the number for it right there. That's the number for the front ring and pinion set. I don't know what the SR means, because you would typically think maybe standard rotation. But let me jump right into that while we're talking about that. Being a high pinion, there is really no such thing as reverse rotation, because the gears don't turn the other way. What they do is they're reverse cut. So if I pull, see, these are both front gears, and these are high pinion front gears. So if any high pinion gear, if you notice the spiral, I'll call this a counterclockwise twist. So if you had the gear teeth straight and you twisted it counterclockwise, that's what they look like. So when the pinion meshes with this gear, if you could conceivably get that to mesh, it would be above the center line here. This is the rear gear that came out of this Jeep. This is the standard Dana 44 low pinion. Notice how the twist on the gear is clockwise. So this is a low pinion, normal rotation, normal cut, I should say. And then one other thing to point out is we got a lot of questions on this. When you're setting up gear patterns, what is the drive side, what is the coast side of the gear? Well, you can see on these, they both have a drive and they both have a coast. And if you look at the tooth profile, you can see how this is a shallower angle, and this side is a steep angle. The steeper side of the gear is the drive side. Okay, it's the convex side of the gear. So it's rounded. So when your vehicle drives, if my screwdriver were the pinion, I'm pushing on that gear, on that side of it. And if you can imagine, this is obviously, you see it's shaped like a wedge. When people talk about, well, why is one side stronger than the other? When you have a wedge, and let's say this is a ramp and a wedge, if I were driving on the coast side of the gear, now I have that big ramp to push the gears apart. There we go. There's some mesh for you. So by driving on the more straight up and down side, I lose a lot of that effect of the two teeth wanting to push away from each other and push this away and deflect the ring gear. That's what you would call that, ring gear deflection. So when guys run a high pinion gear in the back of the Jeep, that tends to be what happens. I've done that many years. I've run high pinion Dana 60s in the rear, and that's the nature of the beast. You run the risk, you lose about 20% of your strength, and you're driving on the coast side of the gear, which is that steeper ramp, tends to separate the gears and cause you to break gear teeth. But that's a discussion for a whole nother day. So what I'm gonna do is strip this down. I'm not gonna bore you with a lot of the setup. Most of it is exactly the same as we did there. I'll get some more video on this probably the next day or so when I get it done and get it going together. And maybe I'll show you some of the highlights of taking these teeth out of here and transferring everything over to there. Just so you don't have to be afraid of doing that. Nothing to worry about. Don't need that anymore. This one, once I strip that down, that's going in the scrap pile. And yeah, I'll get back to you later on with some install, some wrap up, and get this thing out of here probably tomorrow. Okay, that's it. All right, Cooter back here for a brief second. I wanted to show you one little trick I figured out taking these things apart. I did mention we have to take out, let me get organized there, a roll pin. Okay, I knocked the ring gear off. The roll pin goes up through here, and there is a matching hole right there. So what I do is just take a pin punch, put it on this side, and drive the pin all the way through. That gets the pin out. Then what we can do is take the cross shaft out. The cross shaft just comes right out. The next biggest hurdle is how do you get the side gears out? Well, what I did was, back up a second, just took one of the front shafts, clamped it in a vise, because these parts sometimes don't just fall out. But you'll notice as I rotate, the side gears will just walk out. I'm doing this with one hand, so bear with me. Okay, so there we go. Now you've got two side gears, or two cross gears, I guess, with, this is the important part here too, sometimes this washer, see how this one's stuck to it? It's just grease or oil. This little washer here, you don't want to forget that part. Once you've got that out, the side gears actually just drop out, and the spider gears are all out of it. So you've got side gears, spider gears, and then that one, I'm going to lift that off of there and pull that one out. And there you go. These also do have a shim behind them. So you can see that one's got one. This one just fell out right here. And then this carrier, because it carries all those gears, is empty. That's it. There's the new one. I'm going to wipe all these down and just clean them up and oil them. And reverse the order and plop them in there. Put your cross shaft back in. And knock the roll pin back in. And then that thing will be ready to accept some bearings and a ring gear. Okay? All right. Cooter's back. Hi, everybody. So I had to throw in the towel and admit defeat here. And actually had to call East Coast Gear Supply, talk to Steven on the phone, told him what I had going on. He knew exactly what the problem was and told me exactly where the parts were and that they shipped them, and he was 100% correct. When I opened this carrier up, there was no note or slip of paper in the box. But apparently, what I'm supposed to do is I couldn't get this thing to assemble for the life of me. The side gears went back in, fit just fine. Spider gears, I couldn't get them to go back in. So after playing around with it for half an hour, I decided I better call and just double check this, because maybe I got something weird going on. I don't usually use Yukon stuff. This one here being an OE Spicer, that wasn't available. I got a Yukon with the package. He told me, he goes, I know what your problem is. He goes, there's a bag of shims, it's on your invoice, for the side gears. He goes, you got to use these shims that came with it. There were two of them in a little bag instead of these factory shims, which are actually, they're like a Belleville washer. If you can see them, they actually, well, it doesn't really matter. They've got a little concaveness, a little spring to them. He said you got to take these out, take these and put them on here and assemble it. So in real time, what I'm going to do is just show you this. And that supposedly will allow me enough clearance to get the side gears in. Well, the side gears and then the spider gears. So I'm going to shut this camera off for the time being and assemble this, because I actually need both hands and I haven't figured out a way to grow a third arm yet. If anybody has any secrets, leave a comment down below. And we'll get back to you in just a few minutes and we'll see if that solves the problem and if we have a gear differential installed. All right? Okay. I'm back. So anyway, yes, after realizing my mistake and that something wasn't going together right, everything went together fine. Took me about 2 or 3 minutes. Got this all done. Another 5 or 6 minutes. Got the new ring gear on. Bolts all torqued. So I'll go over the press and press the new carrier bearings on. One thing I wanted to point out, for anybody who doesn't have one of these clamshell tools for bearing pulling, this thing is a lifesaver. But what I wanted to point out was if you do get one of these, be prepared for those scenarios where the throw on this is not going to exactly match what you needed. What I ran into was, without the socket and nut on here, when I put this on the way I normally would and just let the screw come down onto the head of the pinion and lift the old bearing off, this was threaded all the way down. This was threaded all the way down. I ran out of travel on here because this pinion is so short. So what I ended up doing was I just took the old nut, threaded it on there, set that on there, and now I had plenty of stroke or thread or throw, whatever you want to call it these days, to lift this old bearing off of here. And what I basically, just like the previous video, what I'm after is the shim that's under here. Because just like the rear Dana 44, this one and most Danas put the shim under the head of the pinion. So I'm not going to bore you with the rest of this setup. I'll show you what the finished pattern and everything looks like when we get that done. But it's going to be down to the old trial and error. I'm going to get my setup bearing box out, find the one that matches this, hopefully one that matches the outer, go through that whole process of getting the right pattern. Bearings on the carrier, shimming the carrier. I'm going to try it with these OE shims and see how accurate that is, and how, I guess that'll be a good test, is how true dimensionally is this one to the one that came out, and will any of these shims work? If not, we go to the shim pile over here. We'll see what fits, and we'll get this front end all set up, and then I'll show you kind of what everything looks like at the end. And you know, the rest of this video is going to be basically what the rear looked like. So we'll just do a quick wrap up probably tomorrow when this is all done, and take it from there. Okay.